Darlene Mrozek. Phone Darlene.
Darlene died?
Darlene passed away last night.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that.
Okay.
Wow.
Is that Bird and Ness's wife, Cindy?
That's Bud's wife. That's Verd and Vince and
Mother?
Mom.
Mom, okay, gotcha.
Polly and all them boys. That's, yeah,
Well, I
Mrs.
think
Inez.
Bird and Ness's wife is named Cindy.
Yeah, I think
too, isn't it?
Cindy had another, Cindy and then she had another.
The one that died in the roof?
No, that's
Right,
the,
That's
that
his son.
Verd's wife,
Because Shannon called me the
is
night she died.
Okay.
Doris Raji,
And
Earl,
somebody else
the
died
Earl
from over there,
Footman's,
too.
sister-in-law. She's a Raji. That's Karen.
Karen, okay.
Verd and Karen.
I remember she's pretty young yet.
Yeah, Karen's probably, I think she's same age as, or a little younger.
The Morrison County Board of Commissioners will come to order. Please stand and join us in saying of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Approval of the county board minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
Motion by Commissioner Jelinski,
Second.
second by Commissioner Blaine. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Additions or deletions?
At this time, Mr. Chair?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Blaine, second by Commissioner Wincher to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. First item on the agenda is Great River Regional Library. Good morning.
Karen?
Good morning.
Good morning,
Nice to
Karen.
see you all
Thank you.
in person. It's nice.
Yeah, really.
It's nice.
It's been about a year since I've been here. I'm Karen
Thank you for your
Hunsack.
time.
I'm the Executive Director for Great River Regional Library. We were scheduled to be here this spring, and then plans changed, so it's nice to be back. I normally come and present on the budget at this time, so I'll go over that a little bit, but because we missed the spring presentation and a lot's happened since COVID, I also have this handout kind of highlighting some of the things that we've done in the past several months. So I'm sure Commissioner Wincher, who's a great representative for you on the Great River Board, has kind of filled you in. We've got a nice budget coming for 2021. We had already been talking about using cash reserves before COVID came along because we had built up our reserve levels fairly high over the last several years. We've been doing a lot of base budgeting and efficiencies. So before we had even started setting the final budget for next year, we had discussed using $100,000 from last year's surplus, and then at the beginning of the year, Great Rivers Board decided to also use the equivalent of one CD to offset the revenue for this year's budget. So we have $350,000 built into the 2021 budget. We do have union contracts, again, thanks to Commissioner Wincher's work, settled for the next couple of years. So we have a pretty good idea of where our wages will be for next year and our benefits for our staff, and that's about 80% of our budget. So overall, Morrison County will actually be seeing as you can see on the sheet, about a 0.75% decrease in their signatory contribution for 2021. We anticipate that'll probably occur again for 2022, just knowing that we're planning to bring that reserve level down from 7.5 months to 5.5 months over the next couple of years. So we recognize that there's, some long-term planning that has to go along with it, but it seems like the right direction at the right time, particularly right now. So if you have questions about the budget or want more details about that, I'm happy to answer some questions. And then I can go over the highlights of what we've been doing over the last couple of months if you want to hear that too. So as you know, we closed the doors in the middle of March and didn't know really what was ahead. And it's tough because at the library, our busiest time of the year is June and July. And one went to distance learning, so we had to do a pretty quick pivot in how we delivered our services. And right away, the Department of Education said public libraries should be a part of distance learning and should try to deliver curbside services to make sure kids had books in their hands. So that was the first thing we did, and we had all of the locations up and running with curbside by middle of May, end of June. And that was a pretty heavy lift. I mean, it takes a lot more work to check out one book if you're running it out the door every time. And figuring out how to manage phones when there's only one phone line coming into the library meant sometimes people were waiting to try to get through to just get their curbside order kind of placed. But we do have all those kinks worked out. And then as the guidance allowed us to open more places, we were able to do things like computers by appointment, which was offered everywhere by the end of June, and now we have grab-and-go services available at all of the locations. They look a little bit differently from one city to the next. I think that's been one of our challenges too, is we're working with really 39 different jurisdictions as we're delivering services. Early on, there were some cities who had concerns about allowing public access to their building in a shared facility. So we've worked through a lot of those through conversations with the individual cities. Our counties have been super helpful in providing the guidance that they've been working under and helping us deliver in-person services as well. While we were closed, we also had some dollars set aside to launch some virtual services. And we were able to pivot also by delivering phone reference services. So we subscribed to a new platform called Grasshopper, which is an 800 number anybody can call and get library services over the phone. And our staff across the region are staffing that. So you might get someone in Swanville one day, you might get someone in St. Cloud the next day, but there's always somebody answering the phone. And that was really helpful, especially as we were starting to launch the new services and people didn't really know how they were gonna work. Wi-Fi to Go was something we received additional state funding to do. If you remember the last time I was here, we were talking about a pilot project out in Pierce with fundraised dollars where people were circulating hotspots out of the library. The state wanted to get more digital access across the region and across the state. So they gave us initially a grant that goes till the end of September, or the end of December, and then the legislature and the peacetime emergency expanded our allowable uses for regional library telecommunications aid. So not only were we able to deploy more hotspots, we will likely be able to sustain them for quite some time. And so we decided not to do this times 32. We took a hard look at where the access pain points are across the region. Morrison County is definitely one of them. So Little Falls has one of the most hotspots that we're circulating, and we're just starting to get some of that second round of grant funded hotspots out. But people will be able to check those out for a week at a time. And then I think we're going to allow people to place holds, which is a little different than what we were doing in Piers. And it's been super successful in Piers, so I have no doubt that as the word gets out that these are available, people will be able to check them out and actually use them from home. We were also able to expand Wi-Fi access outside a number of our buildings. That was another thing we needed to coordinate with our cities, because not everybody wants people parking in the parking lot at midnight trying to use the Wi-Fi. So just talking through the logistics of that, Little Falls is also one of those locations where we've boosted the Wi-Fi signal. I believe Royalton is too. So that's another step that we've taken to try to close that digital inclusion gap. And then a couple of years ago, Great River had set aside funds to expand some of our digital offerings, and Hoopla is a new digital service we launched in the midst of COVID. While we were closed, we were able to spend more time on the project just to get it launched, and so now people are able to stream some video from home with their library card. So we've got a lot of really cool things that happen in the midst of crisis, which has been fun to do, and really rewarding to see how the library was able to pivot so quickly in offering the services people needed in the moment that we were in. Some of the stories of hope are some of the feedback we had gotten on the services we delivered. You can see, I think my favorite one is the last one, where an older woman had called into the hotline and our librarian had helped her download an audiobook, and she's alone. And just to hear the sound of somebody's voice, she said, was just life-changing when you're so isolated. So it's the impact of the services, too. It's been really kind of inspiring in the midst of all of this. But thanks for being part of it. We're really excited about what's ahead, and we see a lot of challenges and opportunities to come. I think public libraries typically see our highest levels of use in the heights of a recession. We also see our tightest budgets. So we are anticipating that, and we've been holding a lot of positions open and just evaluating what we need to do now in order to offer the services we're going to need in the next 5 years. So thanks for being part of it again. We're glad to be a partner with Morrison County.
Well, thank you for being here. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Winter?
I know the answer to this, but if you could explain, did Great River receive any CARES money or PPE money to continue through this pandemic?
We did not. As we're not a county or a city entity, and we're bigger than a normal nonprofit, and we're not really a small business, so we haven't been really fitting under any of the umbrellas that are out there. And we just had a resignation in our accounting department. I was kind of hoping we'd have someone to take the time and break down what we spent. That being said, we knew we were in a better position than some of our cities, so we moved ahead with things like an order of a ton and a half of plexiglass to try to get all the desks open again. So it's not that we don't have related expenses, there's just not a real good path for us to ask for it. I was hoping to send out an email this week just to cities and counties and say, if you're having a hard time spending your money, I think we can probably find some expenditures that are related for your jurisdiction. But if you have suggestions on how best to do that, we're super open to it.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to make a comment. Being married to a former educator, I can't speak highly enough about that curbside thing. Second to none. I would just like to simply thank Great River for everything, staff and management alike, for doing what you did, especially over the big hurdle, and obviously continuing on till today. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. We're happy to do it. We've actually had a couple of schools reach out too and say, okay, how are you handling your books now? Because we just started thinking about our school library. You know, we have to quarantine all the materials now, so it's kind of changed how we're using our spaces. In St. Cloud, the meeting rooms are full of returned books. They sit there and then we check them in a couple days later. So it's really changed the internal processes too. And we're happy to share that information with anyone who's looking for it.
Very good. Commissioner Blaine?
Well, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make note of the, the forward accounting and fiscal responsibility that was shared with us, this morning. Obviously, Karen and your staff, you're looking at the reality of that. Times are different now and most likely will be going forward, and for you to take such a smart approach and proactive approach to addressing your budget and positions speaks volumes to me on this board as far as how you'll handle business, but yet still provide the service to the residents of the county and to the region. And I think it's worth noting.
Thank you, Commissioner Blaine. Commissioner Wilson?
I notice in Piers, they have the little houses like with books in them around town. Does that have anything to do with the library?
It depends. Sometimes those are friends sponsored.
Okay.
We've talked about, how can we help keep them stocked, because I know donations are sometimes a challenge. Right now, we're not taking donations just because it's one more thing we'd have to figure out how to handle. But we will likely be turning that on, and if friends groups want to support those, we're super open to that too.
Well, I thank you a lot, because I know the Piers Library is used a lot by people around, so thank you very much.
Ms. Gruber?
Mr. Chair, thanks. Karen, I would be very interested, I think, and so would the board, at least in knowing what it is that you've had to outlay for COVID-related expenses in Morrison County, and I think that certainly is something we can talk about as we develop and further develop our plan for CARES money. So
Okay.
I think that's a great, you're on a list. Haven't
Yeah.
gotten there yet, but yeah, definitely would want to know what that impact is, and then the board can make decisions as to whether or not that can fit into the program
I
that we
think
have.
this Wi-Fi stuff can be used for that too. I mean, don't.
I very much have a note saying hotspots for distance learning with a couple asterisks going, interesting.
Quarantining of the books, the plexiglass.
Because
all
school
that stuff
districts,
is COVID related.
Mr.
Commissioner
Chair,
Blaine?
Mr. Chair, And Karen, thank you for, it seems through your comments that you've reached out to city officials in the cities, you know, like Pierce or Swanville or Uppsala. You know, those administrations in those communities would also be very open to that dialogue from you, as they have resources also that they want to make available to better their community too. So, so if you haven't on any of those other communities, I encourage you to. Otherwise, I believe, I have great faith that you probably have, but we will also look at that as a county, in a county board here too.
I'll get an email out this afternoon. I was hoping to have actual totals, and that's what's been holding me back. So I think if I just float the concept and then say, okay, what are you interested in? I think we can.
The window of time is not really an ally for a lot of people right now. So, but you know, I would encourage you to certainly reach out to those administrations also too.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for taking a negative and making some positives out of it, and your forward thinking. That's awesome. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, one
Yes,
other
Commissioner
comment to
Winter.
Karen. We've had leases with all our cities except for one, and it looks like we're gonna get that one taken care
I
of
think
too,
we
correct?
are.
All
I don't
right.
want to jinx it.
He just did.
No, actually,
Anyways.
Commissioner Winter's been integral in helping us move that forward. It looks like we actually have a proposal that'll go to the city council and the board for the St. Cloud building, and it should outlast all of us. So I'm very excited about that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Karen.
Karen,
Yeah.
thank you. Appreciate the work you do.
Welcome. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, City of Little Falls, Mr. Kimmin.
It is Greg.
Good morning, Greg.
Morning, Greg.
Good morning, how are you?
Good.
Good. Well, this morning, we've been talking about this for quite some time. It's a crosswind runway down over at the airport. In front of you, we have the grant app, or the grant from the federal government. It's in the amount of $1,573,353. It is a 90-10 split, so 90% would be from the federal government, 5% would be from the state, and then 5% would be split between the county and the city. So we did open bids on the project, so we know what the dollar amount is gonna be, and this is the amount of the grant that we're looking at receiving from the federal government. So this morning, we are asking the board to approve the grant, so we can move forward with that construction.
Very good. Commissioners,
I'll make a motion for more discussion.
motion by Commissioner Winter,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Wilson. Discussion? Commissioner Winter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is kind of off the rails what we're doing here. I'd had a few phone calls about the airport, the new addition with the watershed, again, with these rain events, and they're saying that it was part of the airport that this water is coming down and moving towards their area. I don't know if you could have any explanation or give a little bit of information on that?
Yeah, so we've had a complaint in regards to, last year we put in an additional taxiway because all of our hangars are full, and so there were some private hangars that were constructed last year and currently on this year. So we extended a taxiway for those new hangars. We're currently working with our airport engineer in terms of the drainage on that to look at it. As you know, we've had some serious rain events. We've had a 10-inch rain event, and I think we've had a couple of back-to-back 3- and 4-inch rain events. Nonetheless, we're looking to see what is causing that. It may be some additional grading that's needed over there, but we are looking into that as well to take care of that problem.
Commissioner Winter,
Well, I'm good, thank
Good.
you.
any other discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Blaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Greg, so we list the amount of the grant, but the county's portion of what we will pay to achieve this mission will be what?
If you go to the next page, I think we included both of them on, there we go. So 87,000 is the state, and then the sponsor, which would be split between the city and the county, is $87,408.52. So roughly $44,000 would be the county's, $44,000 would be the city's responsibility.
Fantastic, thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair, I
gentlemen.
have one question for Greg.
Yes.
You were letting us know that the grant agreement would come via email, but I didn't see it. I don't know if Commissioner Lemire eventually saw that email too. I don't think Brian did either.
Correct, and I think your IT guy is right where the city has to do it first and then it goes to the county.
Okay.
So, we're currently working with the city attorney to get that signature on theirs, then I suspect
Okay,
it'll
all
get
right.
to
I
you,
just
so.
didn't want to be the problem again,
Yep.
because I know I missed it one time and
Yep.
now I'm like, oh,
Yep.
I did it again.
We'll get it
but-
taken care of.
Okay, perfect. Thanks,
Thank you.
Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg. Have a good day.
Next on the agenda, social services. Child Support Awareness Month. Morning, Brad. Good morning, Bonnie.
Morning, Brad. Good morning, Bonnie.
The proclamation. That is first on the agenda, is the proclamation.
I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I don't think I printed it. I don't.
So you
Thank
could
you.
do that for them.
Okay. Child Support Awareness Month reminds us that children need the emotional and financial support of both parents to reach their full potential. And whereas Morrison County Child Support staff have a direct impact on helping families meet children's needs. Pardon me. Sorry. Child support staff help families work toward becoming and remaining self-sufficient and financially stable by creating and modifying child support orders, collecting and dispersing child support on behalf of the children. Whereas Morrison County Child Support staff maintain very high standards of job performance, and their duties require them to be well-versed in many areas, including the legal system. Whereas for every $1 spent on Minnesota's child support program, the state collected on average $3.14 in support. Morrison County's average is well above the state at $4.90 collected for every $1 spent.
Wow.
Whereas during Child Support Month, all Minnesotans are encouraged to look to the future of our state and our children, and to work together to ensure their success. Therefore, the members of the Morrison County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaim August 2020 as Child Support Awareness Month.
Commissioners?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Commissioner Jelinski,
Second?
second by Commissioner Wilson. Discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Jelinski.
I just, first of all, thank you, Bonnie, very much. It's another one of those things that social services, public health is tied in with that, in all honesty, general public has no idea about. And I get it. And why would anybody? It's just so touching as far as I'm concerned. We're talking about children. We're talking about tomorrow's leaders, and we're talking about making them succeed. For everything that you folks do, thank you so very kindly, and I mean that, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, it's quite amazing too for the county financially, you know, for every dollar that we spend, that we get almost $5 back. I mean,
That's
as a
big.
county in a whole, you know, whether you like the program, you don't, that brings a lot of revenue into our county.
It really does.
Thank you so much, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Gentlemen, did we finish? Did we finish?
We did vote.
All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Motion carried.
And because it is Child Support Month, I think it's important to share with the commissioners kind of what child support does. And really, it is the foundation of a self-sufficiency program that our agency has. And as you'll see in some of the statistics that Bonnie put together and the information she's gonna provide, it also helps keep families off of other financial assistance programs because families are supporting themselves. So I will turn over to Bonnie for the report she has put together.
Thank you, Brad. All right, so I first start out with what Minnesota does and how we receive our funding. So there are 5 federal performance measures that are reviewed every year, and Minnesota only maximizes its funding in 2 of those 5 measures. So the 2 that they do maximize are paternity establishment and order establishment. So we get the full federal funding. Well, Minnesota gets the full federal funding for those pieces. But the other three, they're still working on bringing the numbers up so that they can maximize the funding on those as well. And Morrison County pretty much falls in line under those same ones. But Minnesota is required to remain 80% above the national average to get 100% of available funding. So anytime the numbers are not at 80%, the state loses funding. So to get the biggest pool of money, they have to be at 80% or above on everything. So when the state is looking at its numbers and upping those, they of course go to the bigger counties, Hennepin and such, because they have 50,000 cases. We have 1,800. So they don't look a lot at us for bringing those numbers up, but our numbers matter when the state looks at how much funding we get. So it's important for us on the county level as well to maximize those numbers. Morrison County moved up 6 spots in the collection of current support. So we now are up to 63rd from 69th, but we're moving in the right direction. And like I said, it's hard to move those numbers with the small amount of cases we have comparatively, but like I said, we are going in the right direction. And we've moved up from 30th, or from 34th to 30th for the collections on dollar value. So we're up to 490 now, and the max we can hit is 5. So we're almost there. So Morrison County also entered activities on approximately 121,000 times on different cases and answered over 4,200 phone calls. So a significant piece of this is also the small amount of people that are currently or previously received public assistance. We currently have 51% of our child support people have never received any form of public assistance. So they've just applied for our services and we're working their cases. 44% are currently on public assistance. And 5% have previously received. So we have about 56% of our cases that have nothing to do with public assistance at this time. So the next graph is where our money comes from, how we get it. The majority, as you can see, almost 3 million of the 3.1 is from income withholding. So employers that are in place sending payments in. And this is all distributed to the custodial parents. So this is nothing that the county keeps. Other sources include things like Pay Near Me, which is a program that the payor can go to Casey, say, and make a payment there, and it'll come into their child support case. So different things the state has set up from to make it easier for people to make payments. That would also include any cash payments that came in through the county, things like that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Jazinski.
Excuse me, Bonnie,
Sure.
I'm sorry, I gotta get this out
That's
before,
okay.
before it goes away, and it's gonna go away pretty quick. Morrison County has collected in 2019 nearly $3 million through employer withholdings.
Correct.
Just in Morrison County?
Correct. These are our numbers.
But just to clarify though, the employer may be in the cities or, so it depends on where the non-custodial parent might be working.
But it's through Morrison County.
Correct.
Thank you. That's, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No.
interrupt you, but
Commissioner Blaine.
that's just astronomical.
No, it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we stopped you, Bonnie, I want to go back to one of the earlier slides and just so I can have you help educate me. You said there was an 80% threshold level there that had to be met. explain what that 80% is, and is this, when you talk about the state meeting this, or there's a reduction in federal funding, 80% of what are we trying to get at?
Okay, so there's a federal pool of money to be distributed to counties, child support agencies. So whatever that fund is, each state can maximize at getting 80% of that by having their numbers come into play. So we are rated against other states as to what percentage of the pool we get. So, and the territories, the US territories are also included in that.
So I'm having a hard time understanding, is this become we're playing in a numbers game here, but I'm trying to figure out how all the cards are laid out here. So is it that we reach 80% of the children who need child support, or I'm trying to figure out how the numbers correlate here, if you can help me.
And I'm sorry if I'm not explaining it well either. So it has nothing to do with the number of children. It specifically has to do with the pool of federal money that is available for states to get money from to support their child support programs. So it wouldn't matter if we had 100,000 cases or 1 million cases, we would still get only a maximum of 80% of that federal budget. And that's divided between all the states and territories. So the feds have criteria in place to determine how much of that pool we get. So like say
We're gonna go into some of the federal performance measures that is how they divide that 80% based on a number of different data elements, not just the number of cases by state, but a variety of federal measures that the state and hence the counties have to reach.
Okay, I'll be patient, and I'm sure that will fill in the gaps there. Thank you, though.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Winter.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'm trying to wrap my arms around this too. If for every dollar that is spent or whatever, we as a county get $4.90. My question is then, why does the federal need to give us money or take money? Or is there counties out there that are 20% that, whatever, that are not up to their par, so then they take the average, so that's where that money's going? If you could try to explain that.
Okay, so there are different counties that have different money, and that's how the state determines the county's portion. But the federal portion is determined by the state as a whole. So Hennepin County having 50,000 cases of the, 230, I think, in the state. I'm not sure of that number, but Hennepin has about 50,000. So they are the main driving force behind the state's numbers for federal funding. So if Hennepin County does poorly, the whole state's going to do poorly.
How would you, excuse me, Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
Commissioner Winter.
Thank you. So when this kind of is getting to this, so when you say Hennepin County does poorly, explain how Hennepin County or how Morrison County would do poorly in that. Is that in reporting? Is that number of cases? Please explain.
That's where the numbers come from for our percentage of orders established. So Morrison County has about 1,800 cases, give or take, at a time. So of those 1,800 cases, how many were we able to establish orders on during the time period that was what the case needed? Not every case needs an order established. Not every case needs paternity established. But of our cases that needed that particular function, how did we do?
So if you go to, like, the paternity established is the next graph. And so this is one of the 5 performance measures that they will evaluate to determine if the state makes all 5, which then will split the child support dollars.
So I want to wrap my head around, again, so if Hennepin County, if they spend $1, Hennepin County might only be collecting 25 cents compared to Morrison County of 490. You take that over 50-some thousand, they're a big driver of this federal money. Is that how it look? That's what we're looking at?
I would say not really.
Okay.
The $4.90 out of the $5, those are two separate things. So, well, the $5 is a separate measure of how the county gets reimbursed. If Hennepin runs us somewhere around the $3.50, somewhere around that in general. So they only are collecting that percentage of the federal money. Whereas we're getting our almost maximum percentage because we're much more efficient at the job we do. So there's the pool of money, and they look at it and distribute it to the state, and then the state says, okay, counties, here are your numbers, so we're gonna give you this much of what we got from the feds.
That benchmark, the dollar spent, earning $4.90 means that administratively, we spend $1 for every $4.90 that we take in and then give back to the non-custodial parent, or the custodial parent. So administratively, we're much more efficient than a Hennepin County when it comes to that $1 earns $4.90.
That's all I needed to, yep, there we go.
So,
Appreciate that.
Sorry.
It took us a while to get
Took a little while to get there, but we got there.
I'm
it took me
sorry.
a while to figure out some of these federal measures when it comes to child support because of how they do their measurements. So, even when you talk about paternity established, they don't take every child for paternity established, and did you do it within a week, a month, a year? It's a set of all of the kids we're working with, so it isn't always an apples for apples comparison because of how they have developed these federal measures.
Ms. Gruber?
Mr. Chair, and that's what I was going to kind of clarify, that there's what it costs us to administer the program and federal dollars to help support the cost of what it is to administer the program. So that's where that whole 80% world is. And then there's what we are able to get from non-custodial parents to then funnel through to custodial parents. And so it's kind of twofold, but yet how we do over here impacts what we get over here in terms of support for the program. So it's kind of two different things, but yet related in a way.
And they just changed it within the last couple of years as to how they're coming up with these numbers. So honestly, it's a computation that I don't 100% understand either. I know what we need to do to get our numbers where they need to be.
From a case-to-case,
Staff.
on a case-to-case basis and supporting our staff, but right, when it comes to getting the data or our particular measurement, it's hard to figure out how they got there.
Correct. So the last of the graphs are exactly what we were talking about, how the state does and how the county does at collecting its money from the feds. So in 2019, our paternities established were at 99.43%, so we've maximized our funding on that as well as the state, because they're above the 80%. Same thing with orders established. This is the other category where the state and the county meet the 80% and above. So maximizing the federal funding. Now, when we get into the other three, that's where we lose some ground. Collections on arrears, which means that there's no active order in place, so we're not collecting because the child is still in the home and still under 18. The only thing we're collecting on is past monies owed. So that's a much more difficult challenge for collections, because when you have arrears, obviously you haven't been working, or there's some reason that pot is building that we're trying to collect on. So we have different remedies to try to collect on those, but it's definitely the hardest area to try to get money from the payors.
But we're
And-
doing better.
Yes, exactly. So the other one is current support, and we're doing better than we did last year, but we're still not at the maximum threshold for us, and neither is the state.
And if you take a look at that one in particular, I always do call this one out, just because if you look from 2008 to today, when we had our first economic downturn, our collections on current was fairly low, given just how the economy was affected here, and pretty much every year, we have gone up, I think, since 2008. I think it just, again, is tied to the fact that people were going back to work, and the economy was looking better, which always helps the non-custodial parents take care of their child support.
And one of the big inputs that we've had this year is the stimulus payments. Those, if you had arrears, went to the parents or to public assistance if there was arrears too. So, the last chart just shows the fiscal year collections overall. So this number, the 44,378,000, that is what Morrison County collected and dispersed, but it includes current and arrears. So we dispersed 3.1 something million to parents for current obligations, and the additional 1.2 or whatever is what we collected and dispersed on arrears only cases. So that's why the two numbers are different, but it's still, the county collections was 4.378.
And can you remind me the number of cases we have again?
Right now, we have 1721.
So that the 3.1 went to the 1,700 current cases. So again, that's a significant economic support for our families. And again, just the primary, most of those folks are not on public assistance.
And we opened in this time period 146 new cases, so we've had either applications that have come through public assistance or parties just applying because they need help with collecting the payments, tracking the payments, things like that.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Jelinski.
Thank you. Bonnie, I think I know the answer, but guess I don't for sure. When do I get off of that program? When do I get off of child support? Get off? When do I quit paying? Is it when my child turns 16, 18, 21, 25, or is done with school, is married and has kids?
Okay.
Can you answer?
Minnesota law is 18 or completion of secondary school, so high school. So if your child turns 18 in January, but they're still in high school and won't graduate until June, you would pay through June.
Okay.
Otherwise, if they're not in school, you would pay through their 18th birthday. So that's one of the things that my workers have to track, are those dates, and contact the custodial parents. Is the child in school? Provide some proof. When are they going to graduate? Things like that. So it can be up to age 20 under rare circumstances where the schooling is still in
But
place.
for all practical purposes, it's 18.
Correct.
Thank
If you remain up to date on your child support payments.
Right.
Otherwise, we'll
Yes,
continue.
of course.
So,
No,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Because you will continue to haunt me for X period of, okay, very good,
Correct.
thank you.
And that's where the federal tax offset or the state tax offset happens, so we'll continue to take federal or state taxes, because if you're in arrears, a lot of times they may not pay at all. And so those are easy remedies, especially now with the stimulus package that went out.
And on that same vein, our numbers next year, because of that, are just gonna be skewed. We'll have numbers, but they won't really be anything to base off of. And especially, the unemployment is running out and stuff, so we aren't collecting through that source as much anymore. So there's a bunch of things that are really going to change what things look like next year, because this is the federal fiscal, so we're reporting, on information through August of last year.
Commissioner Wilson?
So the state and federal doesn't pay nothing on child support. This is strictly on collection of child support, right?
No, we receive federal reimbursement for these services, so actually, child support is in terms of revenue to the county for the work that we do, child support is the, revenue that is the most solid, because it generally is about 66% of all of our costs are covered by the federal government.
To collect the money.
To collect, yeah.
But they're not paying any child support.
Correct,
It's just to collect it.
correct, yep.
Okay.
So one of our expenditures of our program is that we contract with the Father's Resource Program. They allow people that have an order in place to contact them, and they can maybe be helped with completing some court documents to adjust their orders and things. So we pay about $87.48 was our number for last year. So we pay that, and we had over 42 clients that were helped through that program, because we as the child support agency cannot help them modify orders that have anything to do with just the custody or parenting time. And we have a specific criteria that we have to meet in order to bring an action forward, which isn't the same if you're one of the parties. So sometimes they have to pursue it on their own. And so then the Father's Resource Program is something that helps them in some instances. They too can't help with everything, but it's another resource for them, and for really a small amount of money for the help that they get.
And that's actually a multi-regional program. Otter Tail County started that program, and there's, I think, now like 12 counties-ish that are partner to pay those costs for the Father's Resource Program. So we use it both in child support and in our child welfare area. And so, as Bonnie said, they really can't provide legal advice or support with court orders, and so their staff have a place to refer individuals who are struggling with child support, and the requirements are on what they need to do from a legal standpoint. So it's been a good partnership. It's actually out of the Community Action Agency in New York Mills. And so it's been around now. I think we've partnered with them for about 5-6 years or so.
And I've really heard nothing but good things about when clients call to speak. Her name is Lynn, and she handles kind of the routing of everything, and they really do a good job for us. So it's nice for us to have somewhere to refer clients, because we just can't get involved to the depth that they can. So it's very nice. So overall, our numbers look good. It's just a matter of looking at different ways to kind of be creative and increase our numbers. But because of the pandemic, a lot of our enforcement remedies have been put on hold. We cannot pursue new contempt actions at this time, which is an attempt to try to force payment. Driver's license suspensions, any new ones that a payor would qualify for us to look at starting that process, we can't. Everything's just on hold. So again, our numbers next year are going to just be skewed totally because of that as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Bonnie.
Very good,
Yep.
thanks, Bonnie.
Everything you do.
Thank you.
That is all I have for social services. What order these come in on the public health side? The first is a one-day temporary on-sale liquor license for Genola, at the Genola softball field on August 29th.
I'll make a motion on that.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Wincher. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The next request for board actions are new and change of ownership licenses. New for Falls Energy and Lindy Scoop in Little Falls. New owner at the Tin Shack in Royalton. New owners at the Harding Bar and Grill. And so look to move those forward.
Who's wish of the board?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion to that, however, there needs to be a clarification. I believe that the Harding Bar and Grill are in District 2.
Oh.
It just
Okay.
should be noted at least.
Thank you.
There.
Motion by Commissioner Jelinski,
Second.
second by Commissioner Wilson. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
They
Motion carried.
carved out Harding, didn't they, a couple
Yeah,
years
they
ago?
did. I always think that's in my area too.
Been for a while, but yes.
And then a new tobacco license for K&E in Harding as well.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Winter,
Second.
second by Commissioner Jelinski. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And then the next item I have is a contract approval. It has been approved by Brian Biddendorf, the county attorney. And as you might recall at the planning meeting a couple weeks ago, I brought forward information on TCC. They need each of their early Head Start classrooms licensed by an RN. It is basically going through a checklist and approving the cribs. They had an LPN who was doing it, and the federal government did not allow that. And so we are partnering with TCC to help support them in getting the license for their early childhood rooms. And 2 of them in Little Falls and 1 in Motley. So we are contracted rate of $55 per hour for up to 5 hours. It probably won't be that much after the first couple times because it'll take a while for the nurse to get accustomed to all the items on the checklist. But we partner with TCC on a number of things, especially from a public health standpoint when it comes to services. So Penny reached out from TC and felt like this would be a good relationship, and so.
Very good.
I'll
What's the
make
wish of the
that
board?
motion.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Blaine. Discussion? All-
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes, Commissioner Jelinski.
This is a clear sign, again, of working together. Maybe crossing the line just a teeny tiny bit, but it's all within the same thing that public health does. And I just cannot see a negative on something like this.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
That's all I have this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Very
Brad.
good. Thanks, Brad.
Oh, you know what? Sean isn't here. I'm gonna take just one more second.
Okay?
I just have some very sad news. We had a mental health professional who we contracted with to do our clinical supervision and some in-home, and she was actually a part of our trauma-informed, and passed away on Friday while on a walk of a heart attack. And so, I don't know if any of you remember Jeannie Fritz. You might have come in contact with her, you might not have, but really appreciated the work she did with us. Really hard to grasp that she won't be coming here anymore. Just a really kind soul who provided services in Morrison County probably for 15 to 20 years on an independent basis. Was just out on a walk, preparing for vacation, and collapsed of a heart attack. And so her funeral is tomorrow, and we have some staff who are going to go grieve with the family. But it's been very hard to think about losing somebody like that. And so I don't know if any of you have met her, probably not, but it's very sad. So
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks for sharing that with us. Next on the agenda, Sheriff's Report.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning. So, we'll be going over the month of July, and as always, we always have some photos. So, first photo is Ride with the Heroes event. I'm guessing most of you probably heard about this, just with, normally we have the annual National Night Out, and with COVID-19 hitting and activities not really taking place, this was kind of coordinated by one of our local state troopers, Sam Catlin, and then a gentleman who owns a bicycle shop here in Little Falls, Dave Spearstead. So they coordinated this, and they just wanted basically professionals from different entities to get together, and we went for a bike ride. We ended up crossing the bridge to the west side of Little Falls and going to Lindbergh State Park. So kind of a fun activity where we didn't have to really worry about COVID-19. We could go mask-free and get some exercise. Although I was riding it in a side-by-side, sorry.
I was thinking that, I'm like, I remember seeing you, and you weren't really getting a lot of.
Everyone else got exercise. And then, of course, the next picture is, last month, we recognized one of our deputies and a couple of our dispatchers for their life-saving efforts with 9-year-old Dalton, who was run over by a boat propeller and eventually airlifted to HCMC. So we had a photo with not only our staff, but Mayo Ambulance Service, Randall First Response, LifeLink 3 personnel, as well as the doctor, Dr. Simpson from HCMC who worked on this job. We'll kind of talk about our training a little bit. We had 22 officers who attended backup qualification training. And backup just means our backup weapon system. Usually, in law enforcement, we encourage everybody to carry 24/7, just because if there's an incident that takes place, we want to be prepared. So normally, we're not carrying our primary weapon, as that's normally bigger in size, and we want to conceal our weapon. So we usually just have backup weapons and a special qualification for that. So that's what this was for. And then, of course, our SWAT team trained on impact munitions. They did their rifle qual, handgun qual, chemical munitions, and distraction device training as well. So it's just a lot of things that get done, so they just took a 4-hour time period and kind of hammered that out. Any questions on the training?
Location?
Commissioner Blaine?
Location?
This was at the Eastern Morrison County Sportsman's Club.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to our criminal complaints, I'll just highlight where we're seeing the most activity. So we had 64 total complaints in the month of July. If you look at the 4 o'clock position, it's a blue triangle. It says 14%. That was disturbing the peace. We actually had 9 calls. It just equated to 14%. It was 2 disorderly conduct, 6 public nuisance, and then we had 1 harassing communication call for that. If you look at the 7 o'clock position, which is going to be a purple triangle listed at 11%, we had 7 damage to property. And then moving up to the 10 o'clock position, which would be the blue 14%, that would be our theft. We had 4 thefts from a vehicle, 2 gas drive-offs, and 3 thefts from a building and or yard. So any questions on that? Our citations kind of, we're seeing a pattern obviously from month to month. Last month, I'm sorry, we had 226 traffic citations. We had 153 verbal warnings, 33 written warnings, and 25 citations for speed. So looking at our 2-year comparison, obviously with COVID-19, it seems like our numbers have kind of stayed fairly close, but yet dropped. Everything except for our drug investigations. So I guess that's a telltale sign that even with COVID-19 going on, the drug activity doesn't stop or cease, it continues. If we move on to our jail information, this is where we're kind of seeing some positive change. We've averaged 24 inmates for the month of July. Even though we only show 2 inmates from Itasca County for the month of July, as of today we have 8. So it's good to know that we're going back into that direction, and we're actually starting to take some out-of-county inmates so we can actually work on our revenue. I had a printout that I just had printed before I came in today. So January was the last time we actually collected any money for out-of-county inmates. And in January, we collected $3,465. And you'll see for this month, or for the month of July, we collected $3,520. So there's no revenue coming in since January except for this last month, which is good. So like I said, I think we're on the right track again. Hopefully we can keep that consistent. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Outside of, I want to give an update on the fallen memorial, the fallen officer memorial. Everything's going as planned. Today is the deadline at 4:30 for applications. If anybody wants to donate in honor of the fallen officers, the application can either be picked up and or we can email it to you, but 4:30 is the deadline. And at that point, I think as of this morning, we had 44 people who actually put in an application, and we have a total of 80 plus pavers. Depending on how they're gonna do the angle, there might be a few more. But they're granite pavers, they're 16 inches long, they're 3 inches deep, they're pretty thick, and they're gonna last a long time. They kind of blend in pretty good with the exposed aggregate that's out there, so. That seems pretty good for a push. But after today's deadline, what we'll do is then we'll get all the applications, and then we'll bring it to Granite Works, sorry, south of town, and then they'll start the process where they'll, I guess we'll proofread what they're gonna put on the granite paver before they actually go and start inscribing the data. So with that, is there any questions for me?
We can pick an application up upstairs at the office.
Yep, right at the sheriff's office and the old administration office, we have it printed out.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Gruber?
can I just say, good job on that. I think, you know, Sean's office did an excellent job on getting that communication out and organizing it, and it was some nice communication for a good cause, and I appreciate your work on that. I know that was a quick turnaround and a time period crunch there, but
Well, and I
Thank you.
thank the board and administration, and I thank Ethan Wise as well, because it's definitely this was teamwork put in place, and it wasn't just one person, so.
and the flagpoles are up, so they're installed, and we'll get that all complete, and it'll look nice, and it'll be a nice tie-in to the complex in general in terms of visibility of those flags and making sure that we have that memorial highlighted, and I think that's important, so thank you for supporting that. I think it'll really add a nice touch to our complex in general. It's good work.
Commissioner- Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the bench is actually gonna be coming in this week, so there's gonna be the granite bench. And then there's a granite cylinder that'll be in front of the bench, between the bench and the flagpoles. It's approximately 3 foot high, and that's where the names will be engraved. And, I think that's coming, later in September sometime, so I don't have an exact date when this is gonna be finished, but I sure would like to see it on the anniversary or prior to the anniversary of when Sheriff Stack and Andrew Hurlitz were killed in the line of duty. So we'll play it by ear, and I'll keep you guys posted.
Commissioner Winter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheriff, a couple questions. One is when you have Granite Works do the engraving on it, are we gonna proofread these before you're gonna send them back to maybe the donator, just to make sure, you know, that this is spelled correctly or that? And my last question is, since the deadline is today, if, I'm gonna use Commissioner Jelinski, let's say a year from now, he decides he wants to donate, would he be able to do that and have his paper done?
So that's a good question, Commissioner. I think the way we're looking at it is we're not gonna turn anybody down, but speaking with Granite Works, you know, they really wanna get involved when there's like a mass of people that are gonna be filling out the application, because with the installer being part of this equation, they even stated that they don't wanna come in every time and just set 1 block or 2 blocks. They really want to finish the project before it's grouted and taken care of. So with that being said, we were kind of waiting to see how many people are gonna put in an application. As of right now, I'll be speaking with the contractor, and with 80+ pavers and half of those being sold already, it's possible we could either look at doing one side and complete it, i.e. put it in place, put the grout in place, and we're done with it. The other side, we would probably look to get more pavers sold, just so they wouldn't have to come out there and prop one up, and they could take care of everything at once. What was your other question?
The
I'm sorry.
question was, no, I mean, I know, they proofread these,
Okay.
so there, if you can,
So the proofreading, yeah, on the application, we took everybody's email address and or contact. So we'll proofread it ourselves because we have the application. And then, yes, we'll send it out if they have an email address, just to make sure that the party that filled out the application is okay with it as well.
all right, thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you, Sheriff.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Have a good day.
Morning, Becky.
Good morning, Becky.
Good morning. How are you all today?
Wonderful, thank you.
Happy to be here. I do have the regular extension report, but I'm also passing out a copy of our Morrison County Achievement Days report. Sorry that didn't slip into the regular report with that, but Just wanted to send out a big thank you to county employees, to the commissioners, to the many volunteers that helped make our 4-H Achievement Days possible. So this is a little bit different than our county fair report, but gives a quick synopsis of what was going on and maybe some pictures to help show the excitement with those youth. We did have over 90 volunteers that came in and gave over 450 hours of their time to help make this possible. Some of the jobs were not glamorous or glitzy, but they all were very needed and appreciated to make this happen for the kids. We did have 96, I believe, youth that were a part of our Achievement Days over the 5-day process, many kids coming multiple days. In addition to that, we also had 33 state showcase entries, which was exciting. Those are all virtual entries. So youth have to do a video to submit, whether it be livestock or in person, or I should say livestock or static. They can also take pictures and submit those of their static projects. So, a little bit quieter this fall for our state events, but exciting none the same. So,
Questions? Commissioner Wilson?
You know, I was very impressed when I came out there. I know I didn't stay long, but you've done a wonderful job to be able to recognize these kids and stuff. And I thank you for that. It was quite a challenge.
It was challenging. I will definitely agree with you on that one. But that was, we did a family survey, and that was where the majority of the families wanted to do was something in person. And although we didn't have all of our families out there, we don't have all of our families that participate in a regular county fair, so it's not surprising. But those families that were there were definitely excited to be there and very happy to have had that opportunity. So,
Commissioner Jelinski?
Mr. Chair, if I may, Becky, and I know you're very much aware of this, when the decision was made not to have a county fair this year, and of course, I'm more than well aware that that was a damned if you do and damned if you don't situation, I get it. But I want to hand it to Extension, because at the time that the Fair Board, the Egg Society, made the decision, and it was a tough one, to not have the county fair, Extension was already moving forward with plans to do something for 4-H. As we know, the president of the Egg Society is Clint Catherine, who has a passion that's probably second to yours for 4-H. He made it very clear, along with Extension, so please, that there would be something for 4-H. Sooner than later, didn't know what it would look like. I don't know that anybody really did, but it was through Extension, it was through working together, and I truly mean that, working together that this thing came to be. And yeah, we might be living in a different time than we were a year ago. We might be living in a different time than we will be a year from now. I don't know the answer to that. But Extension really came through for this. And I mean, it took a team, don't misunderstand, but it was ingenuity, it was a thought process, and I can't thank you enough. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
thank you. I received a lot of thank yous, and I responded most graciously with, it was not a one-man show. So,
Not at all.
We got any other questions? Thank you so much.
thank you very much. You guys have a great afternoon.
You too, Becky.
Welcome, Chelsea.
Good morning, Chelsea.
Good morning, Chelsea.
How are you guys?
Good, thank you.
Good. Before you today, I have a request for approval for the MCCC sales order agreement to purchase the DS450. The DS450, what does that mean? That means in this agreement, it has a ballot counter machine, a ballot jogger, installation, training, 3 days of on-site support, license maintenance, and software support in front of you. Back in July, I brought forward a voting equipment grant agreement 2 before you, and in that voting equipment grant agreement, Morrison County received $31,542.26 to be used for either assistive voting devices or a ballot counter. So I'm coming before you with the agreement that we would use our Vega funds along with election fund balance to purchase this machine.
What's the wish of the board?
I'll make a motion for more discussion.
Motion by Commissioner Wincher,
I'll second it for more discussion.
second by Commissioner Jelinski. Discussion? Commissioner Wincher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, are we depleted, is this grant, is that depleted, or the election fund balance depleted, or will there still be more money as the elections keep moving on?
Great question. So the Vega 2 grant funds are to be used by the end of the year. And then in our election fund balance, we have roughly $212,000. So there will be remaining funds held in reserve for assistive voting devices when that time comes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Mr. Chair, if I may, Chelsea, I think it's important that we've talked about this and talked about it and talked about it, that something needs to be done for elections. But if you would, please explain the grant. Is this a matching grant? Is this a grant that just came out of the sky from the federal government, from the state of Minnesota, or where that would come from? And after the grant, what is the dollar figure that is a Morrison County responsibility, if you will?
So back a few years ago, we had Vega Grant 1, and with the first grant that we received, we purchased the pull pads and the DS200 machines, and so there was funds left over, and so Morrison County, I submitted for a second round of funding because there was dollars available, and so Morrison County received the total amount available to us for the $31,542.26, and then as long as if we are utilizing the funds, we have to do a 50% match. So we would be matching that 50% and spending $380.48 more over the 50% match.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Commissioner Blaine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chelsea, the election fund balance, you said it's 212,000 or something like that. I'm just for clarity's sake, is that what will be the election fund balance after the purchase of this DS 450? Or is that the balance now, and then we will knock basically 32,000 off of that? Can you clarify?
Currently, right now, it's roughly 212,000 before we purchase this, so after it would go down.
So we'll be at about 180,000 roughly at that time. One other question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Chelsea, we've talked about this a number of times, different pieces of equipment for the county and for voting jurisdictions to use to complete this mission of elections. The one thing that I'm wondering, we've never talked about this, is, what's the shelf life on some of this equipment? When we buy this, when we're gonna spend $63,000 on a DS 450, how much life are we gonna get out of that? Because I'm looking at that in reflection to the amount of election fund balance we have, and, so how many years before we're going to have to replace this? And I realize that's kind of a loaded question in the sense that no one can necessarily judge how long equipment will last before the next latest, greatest thing comes out that helps us save even more time and money. So if you can.
Sure. This equipment, I can't tell you exactly how long it will last. I know that ESNS is our vendor, and they have great support with us and maintenance, and we have maintenance set up every year with them, and we budget for that ongoing. However, our machines that we have are over 10 plus years old that we have with them. And again, ES&S is great support. We always are maintaining our machines, so we're not letting them go as well. A little bit about this machine. I have reached out to some of our neighboring counties, and I know Stearns County has this machine, I know Crow Wing County has this machine, and they've had it before COVID-19, and they said that it works slick. What they've told me is that what the ballot processing time for inserting, what they could do in 7 days, they can shrink it down to 2 days in processing time. The reason that I'm before you today is, one, we have the Vega 2 grant funds that we have to utilize, but we also know that with COVID-19, we have an increase of ballots that will be processed in-house. We have double the amount of mail ballots that we normally would process in-house. Plus, we have an extreme amount of absentee ballots already requested for the November election, and we're not even in our peak time for that request. Right now, we know that Morrison County has roughly 20,300 registered voters, and 7,300 voters are already going to be processed by our office if they're returned back. So roughly right now at this point, we're at 36% that will be processing in-house in our office. Back in 2018, altogether we processed roughly 30% of the registered voters. Again, in 2018, our numbers for registered voters were less. And we also had 8 precincts that were open, where we have eight precincts that switched over to mail balloting this year. So that is taken care of in our office.
Commissioner Blaine?
Two other quick questions, Chelsea. Number one, in granting the agreement to purchase to you today to do this, are we guaranteed we'll have this piece of equipment for this November election and this election cycle?
That question was a question and concern of mine right from the start. We put our name on a waiting list. I think we've talked about this before. Are we even going to have the equipment in time? And we received the phone call not long ago to say Morrison County's up and you'll have the equipment before November and the support there for you and the training that needs to happen to use the machine before we get into the election.
Very good.
The second question would be, does adding this machine then help us with the human resource issue that we've talked about in the past, the number of people we need to have as volunteers or workers to help us process an election as a county government?
You know, normally we wouldn't be looking at this machine because we process everything in-house, and now with the influx of voters registered and mail ballots and absentee requests, this will help out with our processing. Normally we have a couple people that are in the office and inserting ballots, and like I said, this machine I think can insert like 3 ballots within a second, where we can't do that in our office. You're inserting a ballot and then going to the next and inserting, and you know, if they overvote, you know, we're processing that too. So it takes quite a bit of time where this machine can, it has separate stacking devices too, so when it's inserting, it can separate them as well for us. So there's quite a bit of perks with the machine in helping us in the office, yes.
Super. And this will be here, this machine will be within the county here, within the building.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do you have a question, Commissioner Wilson?
I do. Chelsea, we spend a lot on voting. Do townships have to spend money on voting, or do we supply them with everything they need?
So as far as like the machines,
Anything related to voting, do they pay their labor, townships, when it comes to?
for
people?
election judges?
Yep, yep,
Yes,
yep.
they do. Hmm.
But we supply all the other stuff that they need for voting and stuff, right?
We supply the equipment. You know, we do the ordering for them and then we charge them back. So for supplies, ballots,
Okay.
if they're in a mail ballot precinct, you know, they're getting costs for the envelopes, postage.
Well, they pay that then.
Hmm. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, we got a motion and second. No further discussion. It's a roll call. Commissioner Wincher,
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski,
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
myself, aye. Motion carried.
And next on the agenda, I have a request to pay all the bills.
What is wish of the board?
So move, Mr. Chair. to pay
Motion by
the warrants.
Commissioner Blaine,
Second?
second by Commissioner Wilson, pay all the bills. Any discussion? This will be a roll call. Commissioner Jelinski,
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
myself, aye. Commissioner Wincher,
Aye.
motion carried.
That
Thanks,
is
Chelsea.
it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Next on the agenda, Public Works Report. Good morning, Steve.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, everyone.
Good morning, Steve.
I have 3 action items for your consideration today. All are certificates of completion. The first is for our contract 293, which is our maintenance activities for striping, which was by Traffic Marking Service. We try to do about a third of our system every year to keep up retroreflectivity on our edge line and our center lines. We'd recommend that the board would approve final payment for this work.
What is wish of the board?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Jelinski,
Second.
second by Commissioner Blaine. Discussion? This will be a roll call. Commissioner Blaine,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
myself, aye. Commissioner Wincher,
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the next action item is also a certificate of final payment on contract 294. This contract was a highway safety improvement contract in which 90% of this was federal funds and 10% was county. It is the mumble strips, we call them, on the roads that are listed on the resolution. Traffic Marking Service also had this work, and it's complete, and we'd recommend that the board would authorize final payment.
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Wincher. Discussion? This will be a roll call. Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
myself, aye. Commissioner Wincher,
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski,
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, then the final action item is for final payment on contract 2002, which is a contract in which Public Works administered with administration for the parking lot. Knife River Corporation was the general contractor on the work. The work that was under the contract has been completed. We believe it's been completed satisfactorily and would recommend that the board authorize final payment.
What is the wish of the board?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Blaine,
Second.
second by Commissioner Jelinski. Discussion? This will be a roll call. Myself, aye. Commissioner Wincher,
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski,
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
motion carried.
That's all of them, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Steve.
very kindly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Steve's not in here yet. Mr. Chair, if we could move to the building report, if you
Sure.
wouldn't mind. Mike's
We're
here.
gonna skip ahead and go to the building report. Mr. Phillippe's here. Good morning.
Morning, Mike.
Morning, Mike.
Morning, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
How's it going, Mike?
Going good, going really good. So we're getting to the end, so real close, so.
What are you gonna do next year?
You're gonna miss us, Mr. Chair.
I'm gonna miss you,
You're
that's
gonna have to
right.
drive farther
Yeah.
now, somewhere.
I handed out a budget for both the remodel here and then the public safety annex. If you look at the public safety annex, not much has changed. You'll probably see that change a bit next month, just within contractor billing. Just because of the building, by next week, they'll pretty well be done. We'll have some mechanical and electrical yet to bill for that, so. But
right.
next month, you'll see a difference in that one. And as far as the remodel project, we're getting down there. If you go down and you take a look at contingency, we've got about $33,000 left in that. You also have some line items here that you have some money that we didn't spend out of, like the asbestos line item. And then you're also gonna have some of the general conditions budget, left at the end too, so. Other than that, upstairs, I got some guys working on some punch list items. They're moving dispatch back into their space today. And then John and his staff are gonna move up the existing furniture later this week. And then on Tuesday of next week, Interium will be here to set up all of the furniture through the area. So by the end of next week, all the furniture will be set up. And then I think they're planning to move in the day after Labor Day with the rest of staff in the area.
Very good. Any questions? Commissioner Wincher?
If we have $1 left over, $20,000 left over, maybe Steve or Mike, where is that money gonna go?
Well, Mr. Chair. Yep.
I mean, we have to put it in a project, otherwise only have to send it back or something like that, or
We're
whatever.
not doing that.
Well, any money that's left over would go into the debt service fund.
Okay, that's right, that was,
And
I,
Mr. Chair, we have some priority items still on our list as we near the end of the project. We have some other ideas on things that are maintenance or required to have maintenance done on them that weren't touched with this project, that we still have some opportunity for that.
One thing's not addressed, there's the signs, the outdoor signs.
right, yeah.
And that's probably gonna be the last thing that, it'll take the money that's left and.
How about the indoor signs? Is that still?
They've been installed little by little here as we've done it. I don't know if you noticed, some of the other ones have been put up as areas are finished.
Okay.
And so that's the case, and it's kind of funny you mentioned that, but I do have some, this is somewhat of the first draft of what would be going in that center horseshoe area. It'll be lit, that will identify to the parking areas over to the west parking lot, and then what is accessed through the main building. Instead of listing absolutely all offices, we're going with less is more in some of these concepts. We are updating the external signs, so it follows the same non-sun worn color scheme as everything else, so those will be updated, along with some on the east and west side of our complex. They'll be updated and painted. We're using the same structure and not doing a lot of change in the structure and what's sitting there now, but getting them painted and with a current color scheme.
Right.
So those are happening. The indoor ones have been installed as they've been complete as we went through and ordered them. I think even upstairs in the court level is installed, but I haven't walked up there lately. They're on order anyway, and we have the proofs back and forth for them.
Chair for me.
Commissioner Blaine?
So, and maybe this might be a question for Deb, but, or Mike, as, as we're getting close to the end of the construction part of this, or what was the planned construction part of this, and then we look at utilization of remaining funds and that, we don't have a timeline out there that we need to abide by. Is there, or is there, do we have a window of time that we need to finish this in relationship to the bond, and how does that play into this decision?
Steve? Steve, would you like to answer that?
By the end of the year, we'll have this money spent, and we should be fine. There may be, it'll be subject to final, once it's finalized and some of the numbers go, but I don't anticipate there being any rebate on that arbitrage rebate that I talked about. I'm assuming that will be okay, because we spent it within a 3-year time frame.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, so by the time we walk into 2021 with our our 2021 operating budget, this $12 million construction project will then be in the rearview mirror. We won't be talking about this anymore. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, outside of our debt payment on an annual basis
Yeah.
that we're making, no.
Okay.
Correct. That's the goal. That's the plan and should be achieved. No problem.
It should be. I mean, anything that's left in this will most likely be, it'll be before you this year to spend it. Now, will there be a carryover? I couldn't tell you that. I mean, it's all about timing, right?
Yeah.
You know, the signs, if there's some other money that, they talked about, I think John talked about elevators when he was here in budget, elevator controls. If there's more money left, we might, get those done. We just don't know at this time if there's gonna be enough money for everything. But that will happen in another budget or another line item.
So to that, my, kind of where I was going with this was, would we, and maybe this is, too much of this COVID budget infiltrating into my mind here, but would we need to, let's say by the end of the year, have whatever remaining money we have left in that budget on this construction project be earmarked, even if this work, let's say, would run into 2021. But as long as we have that money earmarked and that cost and basically spent or allocated where that's going to go to these projects, the work could run over. We don't have a timeline out there that says, no, if you don't get this done by this X amount of time, you can't do this.
No, the goal was to have fourth quarter of 2020 be kind of winding down this project and figuring out what else is on the list and getting to make sure we know final numbers on what is available as the project completes. Like Mike was saying with some of these different line items, waiting till it's done is really the only option we have to know exactly whether or not there's something else that comes up during that construction phase. But the goal is always at the end of 2020 or in the fourth quarter to wrap that up.
But it doesn't have to be. Does it have to be?
It doesn't have to be. I mean,
Yeah.
Like the COVID has to be.
Different rules subject.
Yeah, yeah.
Once the project's completed and we look at the debt and how time frame of how we spent it, I think we're well within the guidelines. If there's gonna be anything, it'll be very minimal.
Right, okay.
And it starts from those guidelines and those timeframes start from the beginning of the issue. And so we're going back to then for the timeframe. It's not like, it's from the initial issue of the bond.
And the money that was invested with this fund, that was the main sticking point with arbitrage rebate. We haven't come close to making that.
Okay.
Because rates have been so low.
Okay.
So, we haven't come close to that, because that was one of the kickers on this, is that we can only make up to a certain percentage rate. And anything beyond that would be subject to this and we haven't come close to that.
Yeah.
That was one of the factors on arbitrage. Another one was the timeliness of spending, which I think we're well within that one too.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Blaine?
Yeah,
we're
I think
fine, Dan.
it does, and I think it's good. I think it'll be helpful that we can go into 2021. I think is going to provide enough challenges budgetarily, looking ahead, in a level of realism that having this not kind of be a part of the picture, although we love to see Mike in here every couple weeks and talk about all these things. From a management perspective, I think there'll be some advantages to have this in the rearview mirror.
All right, any other questions for Mike? Well, thank you, Mike, for being here today. Appreciate it.
Hey, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
We'll miss Mike.
We will miss Mike.
I could still come back once a month. and do
Yeah.
Or
this.
dilly bars that you make us buy because we lose bets.
Morning, Steve.
Morning. Well, this morning I have the fun thing of approval of publishing our financial statement, which is an annual process.
I missed it. Of the what?
Our annual financial
Oh.
statement publication.
Okay.
We've talked about, there's a lot of pages here, a lot of numbers. We've discussed all these during the year and after the year. It's just a matter of, we went through the audit, it's been audited. Now it's time to publish it. It's required, statute requires it. The other thing it requires is our vendor listing. We can do it after every 2 weeks when we pay bills, we can publish them, but we've decided, I think I looked at it way back when, that it probably costs us more to do it bi-weekly than it does just take them all and publish them once a year, which is also fine. So that's how we've decided to do it, but that's part of this package of deal, and it costs us around $10,000 to do it, unfortunately. I wish there was a better way of just putting it out on our website or doing something different, which we do, but we still have to publish it in the
Probably
newspaper.
put it in the paper. What is wish of the board?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Blaine,
Second.
second by Commissioner Winchester. Discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Zelinski?
I think we've talked about this every year since I've been on the board, on the expense and of the outcome for it. I believe you also make about 10 copies for people that come to get them, do you not?
Yeah, not very many
Or
copies.
5? But I mean, there's nobody that's really interested, but yet the state law, I just make sure that I'm standing corrected. The state law says this is what you have to do. Whether we like it or dislike it, it has to be done.
Yep.
So,
The only people that call me or want this are financial, people that rate financials, the AAA, you know,
Yep.
to get rated. They
Yep.
want this information.
Yep.
And I don't know, there's like 3 or 4 of them that I gotta send a copy to.
Sure.
But that's an electronic copy, that's not a hard copy, so.
thank you, Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
Cost of being, of local governments, or cost to local government to be transparent to the taxpaying public is how I view this.
Any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Got anything, Deb?
Mr. Chair, I did show you, what the intent was to show you those outdoor signs. If there's anything that you see with those that you want to see different, you let me know. Otherwise, we've kind of gone with the same theme, the same color scheme as the rest of the building to get that finished up this fall yet and get the work done before this flies, which
Mr.
comes
Chair,
in sooner
Deb,
than later.
coming in this morning, I had somebody walking, where's the DMV? Are we gonna put something at that main entrance? I don't know how they missed it, but whatever, you know, so.
You know, this is going to be on that entryway where the motor vehicle is, so that's there. We have a temporary little sign. You know, all I can say is in getting used to it is a big deal, time passing. But even when we were upstairs in the main information lobby, people would come in from 20 years ago when the motor vehicle was located on that first floor. It's really, really, really hard to change direction of people that are used to going a certain place or haven't been here for a very long time and it's changed. We have a confusing building, and that's the way that is. We can sign it until we're blue in the face, and I still think you'll have people with questions. We're trying, though, to make it better, and trying to get as many as we can with the directional signs that we have. It's a tough one. I did hand out to you some information this morning. I worked on my color skills and got you some information about townships and cities in your district and who has either requested CARES funding or is eligible to request CARES funding, or who we have received CARES funding on their behalf. So if you look at that document, I have a little key in the back that says those highlighted in green have requested CARES funding directly from the state and received it. Those highlighted in yellow are eligible to request CARES funding from the state, but have not yet received it. The deadline to do so is September 15th. The form to do that is attached within that packet also. Those that are highlighted in blue are those entities that have a population under 200 that we have received CARES funding on their behalf, again, based on the formulas that the state put in place. And we have those dollars that they can request from us for eligible expenses that are COVID related. I included in that little packet what the basic form letter was that I sent, both for those under 200 and over 200, and the direction that they would have to the process that they would need to adhere to be able to get that. One thing that will occur is that if they receive funding and don't use it, or aren't using it in complete form or total, it will come back to the county, which then we would apply to our various programs as we work through that process.
Do they have a deadline, Deb, so? if-
September 15th.
No, City
Oh.
of Royalton, if they don't use it all, let me use them as example, do they have a deadline to get it back to the county?
November, I think it's November 15th, and we heard that yesterday in that AMC Cares meeting, and I think it was November 15th. It was November sometime, where we have December as the deadline for us.
So we'd have 15 days basically to spend the money that maybe came back on the 15th of November, right?
Yes, to put in those programs. And a lot of it is we have those public health costs and public safety costs that not all these entities do have. So the idea is we would have the ability to put that to use, so to speak. I know some of these entities are hesitant on doing this because it's, well, a pain, and I can't blame them, because it's been difficult and challenging for us in operating in this environment where we have sums of money that we need to, in a very short period of time, figure out what to do with that meet guidelines. So I understand the hesitation. However, any thoughts that you guys have in terms of being able to work with these folks to say, it really does benefit locally, or it will be retained by the state and then used elsewhere, which I'm sure will be put to good use. I'm gonna believe that that's the case anyway. But we do have local entities. You heard from Karen today with GRL. There are opportunities there in terms of funding local projects or local initiatives. I'm working to develop communication out to our local emergency responders and try to make sure that their costs, if they have them, are covered, or if there are opportunities for them to look at tools that they could purchase that are allowing them to do their business better. That right now they're sharing radios, or they don't have access to that. So if there are if there is a response that occurs, they don't have a great way to communicate directly with dispatch because they don't have the radio. And if we can have that, we can let them know what we know when it comes to situations at hand and better respond. So there are some opportunities. Access, I think Karen that was very interesting to me, the hot spots for distance learning, the equipping your town halls perhaps with Wi-Fi or internet access could be very beneficial to residents in local areas. Making sure that they have access to their buildings that can be meeting social distance requirements and things when it comes to the election period. If they have some very small buildings, what can they do? Is there anything that they can do to equip them to be able to handle more people and with more space? I don't know, but I think those are things that can be explored. It's daunting to think that all of that would happen in a very short period of time, but we're all doing our best to meet those requirements. So I wanted to let you know of that information and maybe ask for some help on contacting some folks, or being a point of comfort for them as far as questions. If they don't want to call here, they certainly can talk with you guys. You know them, they're your townships that you serve, so you're by all means communicate with them and let them know we're here to help if they need it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So the real just is, if I give this to a township and they fill this paper out, they'll get their money. Now, if they spend their money, that's when they've got to start doing what we have to do with, is it right to spend it on this or that? If they don't want to deal with any of that, then this money will come to the county, and then the county will take care of whatever we need to take care of.
Yes.
So that's kind of their
The
paperwork.
basic gist of it,
Yep,
yes.
okay.
There is online in our new website, if you're following me here, contact numbers for elected officials. Current listing, if you clicked on elections from the homepage and then click on the township officials, city officials, county commissioners, a PDF, you'll be able to find your, in theory, which I want to open the file down here, listings and contact information for those elected officials within your area and your district.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Deb, is it possible in looking at the new website and everything, and there's a lot of improvements in there, we could talk about that, but I think it'd be kind of imperative that we have on the home page, on that first page when you open up, something about this CARES Act funding, a direct link or something. I'm I'm not a big fan when I go look at the homepage that there's not, I mean, that should be spelled out front and center on there, just for this timing. Once we get past this, probably,
Yep. In the county spotlights, we have COVID Business Assistance Program there.
It just doesn't
I-
say
in-
here.
It's all, yes, there's,
okay,
Cares funding.
yeah, so,
and this specifically, what we're talking about right now is for townships and city officials, not for,
public.
yes, the general public. And so what that tool is for and where we direct them is, there's certainly different ways to look at that.
Okay, I don't know, the Scandy Valley Township, for instance, can they donate their money to their Scandy Valley first
No,
responders?
it's not.
Do you think?
Yes, they follow the same guidelines as far as use of CARES money as what we have. They have the same set of information, the frequently asked questions, it's federal money coming in, they have the same guidelines that we have. So yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not the county spotlight isn't the homepage, but I'm just
It
saying,
is.
pardon me?
It is on that homepage, that first page. But you have to click into it then to get there.
Okay.
All right,
You were
anything else,
thinking
Deb?
it was one of those on the top.
No, nope.
All right, committee reports. Tabitha, what are the dates, please?
August 30th, September 12th.
Mike, would you like to start?
Sure. On the first, we've got a planning session at 8:30, county budget, 10:30, Board of Adjustment at 7 o'clock. Let's see, okay. On the third, I've got CMCOA Board at 10 o'clock. On the fourth, I've got Public Works. It says 8:30 and TSWAC at 8:30, so I'm sure that's just, are we doing Public Works? or-
Public Works.
Okay. On the 8th, I got a board meeting at 9 o'clock, county budget at 11 o'clock, department head at 9:30, or at 8:30 on the 9th. And that's all I have.
Commissioner Blaine?
I can't add to that.
Commissioner Zelinski?
Mr. Chair, on the 30th, the Piers is having a parade. I anticipate to be there. On the 2nd of September at about 3:30 in the afternoon, I'm going to meet with Ms. Gruber, a couple of people from Public Health, the president of the Egg Society at the fairgrounds. That should be about 3:30 in the afternoon. At 10 o'clock on the 3rd, I have a State Emergency Communications Board Legislative Committee. That'll be handled via Zoom or something like that. On the 8th, I'm also scheduled for a Towards Zero Death meeting at noon. Whether I make that one or not, I don't know. On the 10th, at 6 p.m., I've got a Trails meeting. That'll be handled via Zoom. And on the 11th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, there is a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board RAC meeting. That, I believe, will be via Zoom also. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Winter?
Everything's covered except on the 3rd, we'll be doing a webinar with the University of Minnesota to be hiring an extension educator. Again, that's kind of on the fence because all depends on the timeline, but again, right now on the 3rd, we'll be starting at 8:30 and it'll be an all-day event. Otherwise, I'm covered.
And I'm good.
What was the name of that one, Randy? What do I call that?
It's extension educator hiring, ag educator hiring,
Yeah.
or replacement, however you want to look at it.
Steve?
In regards to the cities and townships and the contacting of them, I've had contact with 5 or 6, and I was at a cities meeting in Morrison not too long. And I recommend to them that they do take this money, at least apply for it and get it. But I also told them to go out to their websites, the League of Minnesota Cities and the Township Association, because there's a lot of information out there for them. So if you do do contact and talk to them and say, hey, go out there, because there are, I mean, there's out there, just like how you seen yesterday at AMC, somehow they spent their money, they got those same examples out there on their website, so.
Okay.
I'd recommend that you tell them that, to go out and look and see what, because maybe they're not looking at the big picture, but most of them really just said, I just don't wanna deal with this. And I guess I can't push them to deal with it, but, 'cause I really don't either, but the same
Right.
fact that they still have some opportunities with some of the money. And one thing that they have going for them that we don't is, they're well under the threshold for the single audit, so most likely they won't be audited as closely as we will be on our money. Because they're well under the 750. I just wanted to give you kind of an update on that.
All right, thank you for that, Steve. Gentlemen, anything else? Deb? Being no further business, meeting adjourned. Oh, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Blaine. Any discussion?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey.
Meeting adjourned.
Good job, Mr. Chair.
I do it on my own.
I
You
just.
can use all the power he wants.
On the webpage.
Yes.
I just-
Well, I don't mean to be argumentative, but it is on the front page, so I don't know how to.
But, could we put, because the reference now on, all this deal is now on CARES Act, so that